The Galactic Council Chamber was the heart of the universe's greatest alliance. Here, the most powerful species gathered to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. The chamber was massive, an endless hall filled with glowing seats, each representing a different civilization. Some of these seats belonged to ancient empires, others to newly rising powers. But one seat remained empty. It had been that way for as long as anyone could remember. A young delegate, Rithan of the Velnari, stood near the back of the chamber. It was his first time attending a council meeting, and his dark eyes scanned the grand hall in awe. His people had fought for centuries to earn a place here. Yet, as he looked around, his attention kept returning to the single vacant seat near the center. It was not just any seat, it was Earth's seat. He turned to an older diplomat beside him, a member of the reptilian Zorith. "Why is that seat empty?" Rithan asked. The room fell silent. Nearby delegates turned their heads toward him, their expressions unreadable. The elder Zorith's scaled face twitched slightly, as if Rithan had asked something forbidden. Finally, the old diplomat let out a slow breath and spoke in a low voice. "Because no one dares to sit there." Rithan frowned. "But why? What happened to Earth?" The elder's eyes darkened. "That is not a question we ask." The meeting began, but Rithan could barely focus. As different species debated trade routes, military alliances, and border disputes, his mind remained locked on the mystery of the empty seat. He noticed how no one even looked at it. It was as if the chair did not exist, as if the council feared acknowledging its presence. Finally, when the supreme speaker of the council finished addressing the chamber, Rithan raised his voice. "Honorable Speaker, I have a question." The supreme speaker, an ancient being of the Lumari species, turned its glowing gaze toward him. "Speak, young delegate." Rithan swallowed but stood firm. "Why is Earth's seat empty? Why has no human ever come to claim it?" The chamber fell into absolute silence. Some delegates shifted in their seats. Others exchanged uneasy glances. The supreme speaker's glow dimmed for a brief moment before it spoke. "Because they refused." Rithan's brow furrowed. "Refused." The supreme speaker nodded. "When the Galactic Council was formed, we invited Earth to join us. We offered them a seat at this table, just as we did for all rising civilizations." Rithan leaned forward. "And what did they say?" The speaker hesitated, then finally spoke the words that had haunted the council for centuries. "They said no." A chill ran down Rithan's spine. No species had ever rejected a seat in the Galactic Council. It was the highest honor, the greatest step toward power and unity in the universe. "But why?" he asked. The supreme speaker's voice was slow, careful. "We do not know. They simply declined our offer and disappeared." "Disappeared," Rithan repeated, confused. The speaker nodded. "After rejecting the council, Earth cut off all contact. No trade, no diplomacy, no ambassadors. They locked themselves away, and we have not heard from them in over 500 years." Rithan's heart pounded. 500 years? That was impossible. No species could survive alone for that long. The universe was dangerous, filled with empires that would destroy an isolated world without hesitation. "How did they survive?" he whispered. An older delegate, a member of the insectoid Kryn, clicked its mandibles. "That is the question we have never answered." Rithan glanced around the chamber. He could see it now. The unease, the tension in the room. This was not just a forgotten history lesson. The other species feared Earth. They did not just survive, the Kryn delegate continued. They changed. Rithan's hands clenched into fists. He had to know more. "Has anyone tried to reach them?" The supreme speaker let out a deep sigh. "Many have tried." And the speaker's glow dimmed once more. None returned. The silence in the chamber felt heavier than before. Rithan's mind raced. What had humanity done? What had they become? And why? Why did the council fear them so much? His gaze drifted back to the empty seat, now seeming less like a forgotten relic and more like a warning. The Galactic Council chamber remained silent long after the meeting had ended. Delegates slowly left their seats, murmuring among themselves, but Rithan stayed behind. His mind was restless, replaying the Supreme Speaker's words over and over. Earth had refused the Council's invitation, cut itself off from the galaxy, and vanished. And yet, despite being absent for centuries, the very mention of humanity still carried an unspoken weight. It was not just mystery, it was fear. Determined to uncover the truth, Rithan made his way toward the Council's Grand Archives. The massive structure, carved into the heart of the station, held records dating back thousands of years. It was heavily restricted, but as a delegate, he had limited access to historical documents. He approached the archive keeper, an old Avari with bright silver feathers and tired eyes. "I need access to records on Earth," Rithan said, keeping his voice steady. The Avari's feathers ruffled slightly. "That is a dangerous request, young delegate." Rithan held his ground. "I just want to understand. The Council fears them, yet no one speaks of why." The keeper studied him for a long moment before signing. "Very well. You will not find much. But I warn you, some knowledge is better left untouched." The archive doors slid open, revealing towering shelves of data tablets and holographic records. Rithan walked inside, the cold artificial light casting long shadows across the metallic floor. He searched for anything related to Earth, but as the Avari had warned, the information was scarce. Most records had been erased, leaving only vague references and cryptic reports. Finally, after what felt like hours, he found something. A restricted file, marked with a security warning. His pulse quickened. He knew he should not open it, but his curiosity had already taken control. With a quick override using his delegate credentials, the file unlocked, and an old transmission flickered to life before him. The image was grainy, the voice distorted by time, but it was unmistakably human. "To the Galactic Council," the voice said, calm yet firm. "We appreciate your offer, but we must decline. Your laws, your structure, they are not for us. We will walk our own path." The message was brief, yet it sent a chill through Rithan's veins. No arrogance, no hostility, just certainty. The humans had made their choice, and they had not looked back. But why? Why reject the greatest alliance in the galaxy? As the transmission ended, the file abruptly locked itself, and an automated warning flashed across the screen. Unauthorized access detected. Rithan's breath caught. He had triggered something. He turned, ready to leave, but the Avari keeper was already there, staring at him with a mixture of frustration and pity. "You should not have done that," the old keeper whispered. "Why?" Rithan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is the Council hiding?" The Avari sighed, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. The Council did not simply accept Earth's refusal. They watched. They sent envoys, spies, even ships to observe from a distance. Every attempt ended the same way. Silence. Rithan frowned. "You mean they lost contact?" The keeper shook his head. "No. The ships returned, but empty. No crew, no bodies, nothing. Just gone." A cold shiver ran down Rithan's spine. Something was wrong. Something beyond simple isolation. "Then what do you think happened?" The Avari hesitated before leaning in, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think Earth did not just reject the Council. I think they evolved into something we cannot understand." Rithan's heart pounded as he realized the full weight of what the Council feared. The empty seat was not just a reminder of Earth's absence. It was a warning. Rithan could not sleep that night. The words of the Avari archive keeper echoed in his mind, looping endlessly. Earth did not just reject the Council. They evolved into something we cannot understand. He had come looking for history, for facts. Instead, he had found shadows and fear, a mystery that no one wanted to solve. But that only made him more determined. He needed answers, real answers, and the only way to get them was to go where no one else dared, Earth itself. The idea was madness. No ships traveled to Earth. No records even hinted at recent contact. The Council had declared the Sol system off-limits, an unspoken rule that no species dared to break. But why? What could possibly be so terrifying about a single planet? A world that, according to all logic, should have been weak, alone, and vulnerable. And yet, something kept the galaxy away. Rithan spent the next few days discreetly gathering information. He spoke to traders, mercenaries, even smugglers, anyone who might have rumors about Earth. Most dismissed his questions with uneasy glances, muttering about the dangers of asking too much. But one, a grizzled old starship pilot with cybernetic implants, finally gave him something useful. "You're not the first to be curious about Earth," the pilot said, swirling a drink in his metal fingers. "A few have tried to get close. None of them liked what they saw." Rithan leaned in. What did they see? The pilot's mechanical eye flickered as he chuckled darkly. "That's the thing, kid. They didn't see anything. No transmissions, no satellites, no space stations, just a dead system. But," he hesitated, lowering his voice, "some say they felt something, like the planet was watching them." A chill ran down Rithan's spine. A planet watching. That was impossible. And yet, something about the way the pilot spoke made him believe it. "How do I get there?" Rithan asked. The pilot sighed, shaking his head. "I wouldn't. But if you're crazy enough to try, you'll need a stealth ship. The Council keeps an eye on anything heading toward Sol. You get caught, they'll erase you from history." Rithan clenched his fists. That only confirmed what he already suspected. The Council wasn't just afraid of Earth. They were hiding something. And if no one else was willing to uncover the truth, then he would. 2 nights later, he stood on a hidden landing pad deep within the lower districts of the station. A sleek black vessel, built for silent travel, waited before him. The pilot had called in a favor, arranging passage aboard a smuggler's ship heading to the outer rim. From there, Rithan would take a smaller craft, alone, straight into forbidden space. As he stepped aboard, he took one last look at the Galactic Council's shimmering towers in the distance. If he succeeded, he would return with the greatest discovery in history. If he failed, he might never return at all. The journey to the Sol system was eerily quiet. Rithan had expected patrols, automated defense systems, something to warn outsiders away. But there was nothing. No distress signals, no warning beacons, not even old wreckage drifting in the void. It was as if Earth had never existed. Yet the planet was still there, a silent blue sphere floating in the darkness, untouched and unclaimed. As his small stealth craft drifted closer, his ship's scanners struggled to lock onto anything. There were no artificial satellites, no space stations, no signs of an orbital presence. That was impossible. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy had a network of defenses, shipyards, and relay stations in orbit. Even the most primitive species left something behind. But Earth, it was empty. His ship's proximity alert chimed as he breached the edge of the planet's atmosphere. The controls vibrated slightly, struggling against an invisible force. Not turbulence, not interference. Something else. Something deeper, woven into the very fabric of space around Earth. Then, without warning, every system on his ship shut down. The lights flickered and died. The thrusters sputtered to silence. Even the emergency power refused to respond. Rithan's breath caught in his throat as he realized he was falling. Panic surged through him, but he forced himself to remain calm. He had trained for crashes. He could survive a forced landing. But as he looked through the cockpit window, his fear turned to something else entirely. Earth was not still. The clouds below moved in unnatural patterns, spiraling in ways that defied physics. The landmasses beneath the atmosphere seemed to shift, not as tectonic plates, but as if the planet itself was aware of him, reacting to his presence. A deep, resonant hum filled the air around him. It did not come from his ship. It came from Earth itself. His descent quickened. The cockpit glass trembled. He braced for impact, his heart hammering as the ground rushed toward him. But just before he crashed, everything stopped. His ship froze in midair, suspended above the surface. No engines, no force fields, nothing was holding him up. He was simply not falling anymore. And then, for the first time in recorded history, Earth spoke. Not through words, not through sound, but through his mind. "Why have you come?" Rithan gasped, clutching his head. The voice was everywhere, surrounding him, inside him. It was not one voice, but many, millions, perhaps billions, speaking as one. Earth was not abandoned. It was alive. Rithan struggled to breathe. His body remained frozen, but his mind felt like it was drowning. The voice, no, the voices, spoke in unison, neither hostile nor welcoming. They were waiting, watching. "Why have you come?" The question echoed through his mind, pressing against his thoughts like an unseen force. He tried to respond, but his voice refused to work. Words did not matter here, intent did. And Earth, or whatever it had become, was reading him like an open book. "You seek answers," the voices continued. "You seek the truth." Yes, that was why he had come. He forced the thought forward, hoping they could sense it. "And yet you fear what you will find." A shudder ran through him. He did fear it. Earth had been cut off for centuries, its absence leaving an unspoken terror in the hearts of the Galactic Council. What had humanity become in all those years of isolation? As if in response, the world below shifted. The ground rippled, oceans churned, and the clouds twisted unnaturally. This was no ordinary planet. It was something more. "You are not the first to come here," the voices whispered. Rithan's pulse quickened. Others had tried. That meant someone, at some point, had reached Earth, had seen it. But then, why was there no record of them? They were not ready. The voices answered his unspoken question. A sudden, overwhelming flood of memories rushed into his mind. Images of ships approaching Earth, some with diplomacy, others with fear. He saw their fates unfold in an instant. Some were allowed to land, only to disappear. Others never even made it that far, their vessels erased from existence before they could break orbit. No battles, no wreckage, just nothing. "The Council fears us because they do not understand us," the voices said, "and what is feared must be hidden." Rithan felt his mind cracking under the sheer weight of the knowledge pressing into him. The Council knew something. They had not just avoided Earth, they had actively erased it from history. "And now you must decide," the voices continued. "Will you return to them, bearing the truth, or will you stay and become part of it?" His vision blurred. The air around him hummed with unseen energy. He had come seeking answers. But now, standing at the edge of a secret the galaxy was never meant to know, he realized he might not be allowed to leave. "You said." Rithan's breath came in sharp gasps. His body was weightless, yet he felt like he was sinking into something far greater than himself. The voices in his mind had gone silent, leaving behind an unbearable stillness. The choice they had given him lingered in the air like a trap waiting to be sprung. Return to the Council with the truth, or remain and become part of it. A rational part of him screamed to leave, to escape while he still could. If Earth truly was what the galaxy feared, then exposing the truth would shake the foundations of every known civilization. He could return as a hero, the first to survive an encounter with whatever humanity had become. But another part of him hesitated. The silence around him was not empty. It was watching, judging, weighing his worth. Earth had allowed him to come this far, but he could feel it. He was still being tested. What does it mean to be part of it? He thought, not sure if the voices could still hear him. The world below stirred. The landmasses did not shift as before. Instead, something rose. A structure, vast and ancient, emerged from beneath the planet's surface. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. Not a city, not a fortress, but something in between. Its architecture defied logic, its form constantly shifting, as if refusing to be truly understood. It did not look built, it looked grown, the living thing shaped by forces beyond comprehension. "Come," the voices whispered. Rithan's body, still weightless, began to descend. He struggled, but there was no resistance. He was not falling. He was being brought down. His ship, still frozen in the air, remained untouched. It was clear now. His vessel was no longer his escape. Earth had given him a choice, but it had also decided to show him what that choice truly meant. As he drifted toward the ground, he saw figures waiting below. Humanoid, tall, motionless, their faces unreadable. They stood in silence, their very presence radiating something he could not define. Not hostility, not welcome. Something deeper. Rithan's mind reeled. He had come searching for the truth, and now it stood before him, waiting. The question was he truly ready to hear it? Rithan's feet touched the ground, but the surface beneath him did not feel solid. It pulsed beneath his boots as if alive, responding to his presence. The towering figures stood before him, their forms shifting slightly in the dim light. He could not tell if they were human, or something beyond human. The silence stretched, thick with meaning. They were waiting. Rithan swallowed hard. He had no weapons, no backup, no guarantee he would ever leave this place. Yet, something deep within him, a primal instinct, urged him forward. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. One of the figures stepped forward. As it moved, its form seemed to stabilize. A human, or at least it looked like one. But its eyes, they were not normal. They gleamed with something ancient, something infinite. "We are what remains," the figure said. Its voice was calm, yet it carried the weight of something far older than Rithan could comprehend. "Humanity," Rithan breathed. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering the word. Humanity was an idea, a beginning. We have become something more. Rithan's pulse pounded in his ears. He had come expecting ruins, remnants of a species long forgotten. Instead, he had found survivors. But not just survivors, something beyond survival. "Why does the Council fear you?" he asked, though deep down he already knew the answer. The figure took another step closer. "Because they do not understand us. And what they do not understand, they must control. But we will not be controlled." A deep, resonant hum filled the air, the same sound he had heard when he first approached Earth. The ground beneath him shifted, revealing more structures, more figures, all watching. Rithan realized the truth then. Earth had not been abandoned. It had evolved. The galaxy had spent centuries fearing what had become of humanity. They had told stories, whispered warnings, erased records. But the truth was far worse than their worst fears. Humanity had not died. It had ascended. And now, as Rithan stood before them, he understood the final choice they had given him. Return to the Council and spread fear, or stay and become one of them.